our culture, our societies don't accept. It's very difficult for us to be able to impose on people that which they themselves do not accept.
Uhuru Kenyatta, Kenya has other things to worry about.
For Kenyans today, the issue of gay rights is really a non-issue. We want to focus on other areas that are day-to-day living for our people. The health issues that we have discussed with President Obama, these are critical. Issues of ensuring inclusivity and of women, a huge section of society that is normally left out of the mainstream of economic development. What we can do in terms of infrastructure, what we can do in terms of education, in terms of our roads, in terms of giving our people power, encouraging entrepreneurship. These are the key focuses.
President Obama recently endorsed a U.S. Supreme Court ruling permitting gay marriages in all American states.
Maybe once, like you have, overcome some of these challenges, we can begin to look at new ones. But as of now, the fact remains that this issue is not really an issue that is on the foremost mind of Kenyans, and that is the fact.
On the streets,
according to human rights, it's okay. Let the person decide over what is right to according to him.
We will not allow gays to come to our land or to continue here. As an African, I will not support gayism in our land.
Obama is not supporting gays. He's saying, as being a politician, he's the father of all. He cannot say that he loves the other people and he hates the other people.
Hapo ni kujiadhari sana. Juu wewe sasa unasawa mwanamume namna gani ukiwa mwanamume? Ama ni mapenzi tu?
Gayism is against God's commandments.
Sisi watu kama hapa area ya Mosop, Eldoret tumekataa.
Lakini huko kwa huko US kama wao wamesoea hiyo kwao aje baki tu kwao.
So wasiseme ati kwamba Obama analazimisha. Na wasiseme kwamba ni sheria tu Obama ameleta ifanye kazi. Ni kitu yenye inaendelea na iko mpaka sasa hivi. So maone Obama alikuwa anasema watu wakipendana wenyewe kwenyewe hawana kosa wala kuna chenye wamefanya mbaya.
Tufuate mila zetu. Mila ambazo zinatueleza kwamba wanaume waoe wake na wake waolewe na wanaume.
The state does not need to weigh in on religious doctrine. The state just has to say we're going to treat everybody equally under the law, and then everybody else can have their own opinions.
The High Court in Kenya in April made a ruling allowing the registration of the National Gay and Lesbian Human Rights Commission as a non-governmental organization, a decision that the Attorney General appealed against. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
All right, now as President Barack Obama expressed his gratitude over his reception at his father's homeland, from the 21 gun salute to his Guard of Honor inspection, a section of Kenyans were disappointed by his itinerary, which they say was too tight. Many turned up outside the August 7th Memorial Park to have a glimpse of him, but ended up being disappointed. Here now are some of the pictures of Obama's moments in Kenya today. All right, now, President Barack Obama's first order of business yesterday was to have dinner with his family. Some of what was described in international media as, dozens of relatives. And in fact, one of the journalists at the press conference today asked him about, what he had to say to his family, something that a lot of people took issue with. But let's take a look at what he had to say about his family earlier today.
In terms of what I was talking about with my family, mostly we were just catching up. There's a more immediate family that I have known well from previous visits. There was some more extended family that I had not met before. My sister, Alma, who I'm very close to and stay in close contact with, I think helped to make sure that everybody was represented. I think the people of Kenya will be familiar with the need to manage family politics sometimes in these extended families. There are cousins and uncles and aunties that show up that you didn't know existed, but you're always happy to meet. And there were lengthy explanations in some cases of the connections. But it was a wonderful time. And part of the challenge that I've had during the course of my presidency is that given the demands of the job and the bubble, I can't come here and just go up country and visit for a week and meet everybody, and that's partly actually what I had to explain was begging for forgiveness that once I'm a private citizen I will have more freedom to reconnect and to be involved and engaged in some of the work that needs to be done, because some of these communities are very poor. I'm more restricted, ironically, as President of the United States than I will be as a private citizen in terms of some of the hands-on direct help that I'd like to give. Partly just because of schedule, but partly also because of making sure that in my relationship to Kenya, I'm understood to be operating as the President of the United States.
Let's connect with Nyeri County, where Carol Nderi tells us people poured into town to find mega screens where they could watch the proceedings at State House Nairobi and the other activities that Obama and Uhuru were engaged in today.
And the 20 that he came with are part of the team that will be sitting with the... Of course, it's already new. There was, of course, some controversy yesterday when he was not at the airport to welcome President Barack Obama, whether he was going to be between two governments, the United States and Kenya.
We are just following up about President Obama's visit in Kenya, and we are so excited and we are very happy. His address this morning when he was opening the GES Congress Summit, very, very, very good. He gave a lot of hope to us Kenyans. Here in Nyeri we have been very affected because our own have been killed in Mandera. We have lost like 20 of our young people who have gone to look for employment in Madeira. And the other thing is that already we have heard that there is an entrepreneurial center which is going to be funded in Kenya. Kenya has been chosen as one of the 3 countries that are going to benefit from that.
I have listened to his speech in which he said that Africa is on the move. Africa is on the move, and people will get liberated out of poverty. And particularly happy about his interest in women and youth, because he has said that women and youth are the powerhouse of entrepreneurship.
All right, that all men live in the shadow of their fathers is a common belief. U.S. President Barack Obama was estranged from his Kenyan father, Barack Obama Sr. In his book, Dreams from My Father, the man who is now the U.S. President narrates a story of growing up without a father figure and of his few encounters with his old man. KTN's Sharon Mamanyi now takes a closer look at Barack Obama's senior life and how his son, the world's most powerful man, may just be living his father's dreams.
First published in 1995, Dreams from My Father paints the struggle U.S. President Barack Obama went through finding himself, understanding his identity, and connecting with his roots. In the biography, Obama details his metaphorical search for his Kenyan father, Barack Hussein Obama the Sr. Born on 18th June 1936, Obama Sr. was a senior government economist. In 1959, he received a scholarship to study economics at the University of Hawaii. It is at the university 1 year later that he met his second wife, Stanley Ann Dunham, with whom he sired a son, Barack Obama II. A year later, Obama Sr. headed to Harvard University for a graduate fellowship in economics, leaving his young family behind. Barack Jr. would only see his father 10 years later.
Never really knew my own father. I was raised by a single mom and 2 wonderful grandparents who made incredible sacrifices for me. But I still wish I had a dad who was not only around but involved. Another role model to teach me what my mom did her best to instill. That's why I try every day to be for Michelle and my girls what my father was not for my mother and me.
Obama Sr. returned to Kenya in 1964, later serving as an economist in the Kenyan Ministry of Transport. He later was promoted to senior economist in the Kenyan Ministry of Finance. In 1965, he published a paper titled Problems Facing Our Socialism, harshly criticizing the blueprint for national planning. In the footsteps of his father, Barack Obama II gave the economic sector serious attention. In his first 2 years in office, Obama signed into law economic stimulus legislation in response to the Great Recession in the form of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 and the Tax Relief, Unemployment, Insurance Reauthorization and Job Creation Act of 2010. According to Barack II's memoir, Obama's continuing conflict with Kenyan President Jomo Kenyatta destroyed his career. He was allegedly fired and blacklisted in Kenya, finding it nearly impossible to get a job. During his 2009 trip to Ghana, Obama said, and I quote, "In my father's life, it was partly tribalism and patronage and nepotism in an independent Kenya that for a long stretch derailed my father's career." End of quote. Biographer Sally H. Jacobs, in her book The Other Barack, The Bold and Reckless Life of President Obama's Father, writes that at the University of Hawaii, Obama Sr. stood out for his public speaking and his dancing skills, what he can be said to share with Obama II. Sally also writes that the senior Obama was an alcoholic. This is Kaloleni area in Nairobi, Kenya. At this very bar is where the senior Barack would often have his drink.
So Barack Obama actually was here. So his group and his caliber were here. And he used to come, he socializes, he drinks with them. He goes, he comes, he socializes, he drinks with them, he goes.
Hours before he died in a tragic road accident, he had his favorite drink at this bar.
He was a man who used to like drinking whiskey.
Both passionate intellectuals, both having attended Harvard schools, and both engaged in public service, Barack Obama Sr. and Barack Obama II clearly share more than just names.
In Dreams from My Father, Obama II writes, and I quote, "I realized how even in his absence, his strong image had given me some bulwark with which to grow up, an image to live up to or to disappoint." End of quote. Well, growing up to be the first black president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, Barack Obama II may have well surpassed his father's dreams. Sharon Momanyi, KTN News.
Let's now refocus on the bilateral talks between the two presidents and take a look at the outcome of those talks. The U.S. has backed Kenya's military action in Somalia against the Al-Shabaab insurgents. The U.S. president says his country will continue to provide financial, technical and training assistance to Kenya's security forces.
At the center of the bilateral talks between the two countries at status was the terror threats facing Kenya. The two nations resolving to scale up the war on Al-Shabaab in Somalia to stabilize the Horn of Africa region.
What we discussed was the importance of, number one, continuing the effort to root out Al-Shabaab's capacity inside of Somalia, working jointly. And as we speak, Kenya is working with Ethiopia and with the United States and others to further degrade Al-Shabaab's space of operations inside of Somalia.
We are satisfied with what we're doing. We need to expand that more, because the battle that we're fighting is not a Kenyan war. Kenya just happens to be at the frontier of it, being a neighbor to a country that for a long time has not had any kind of formal government.
Nonetheless, in the face of violent extremism within the country's borders, the U.S. president challenged and warned the country to change its approach in dealing with the communities and lobby groups not to provoke radicalization from the affected communities. The Somali community and its business class in particular have cried foul on crackdowns mounted by security forces in the country's counter-terrorism measures.
If in reaction to terrorism you are restricting legitimate organizations, reducing the scope of peaceful organization, then that can have the inadvertent effect of actually increasing the pool of recruits for terrorism and resentment in communities that feel marginalized.
He's also just mentioned working with societies and how to prevent especially extremists from finding a bed of fodder for them to be able to develop and to grow and to nurture the terrorists of tomorrow.
The states, however, backed Kenya's ongoing military action against the Al-Shabaab insurgents in Somalia. This despite calls from within Kenyan quarters to pull out KDF soldiers from Somalia to cede to Al-Shabaab demands on the pullout. The U.S. president saying the best strategy to deal with Al-Shabaab is to weaken their operations.
We have to continue to make progress in intelligence sharing and being able to identify and prevent threats before they occur here in Kenya and elsewhere in the region. Part of our announcement today involves additional funding, additional assistance that we're providing the Kenyan security forces to deal with these very specific counterterrorism threats, as well as additional training and assistance.
But the kind of fight we're having right now, this is an existential fight for us. This is something that we have not been familiar with. Kenya has always been a country that has respected different religions. This issue of terrorism is new to us. And as it is new, we learn with each and every step. We are improving our capacities and our methods of dealing with terrorism.
Obama regretted the issuance of travel advisories to Kenya by the U.S. State Department. The U.S. president distanced himself from the advisories, saying they were not political, but meant to safeguard the safety of the embassy staff and tourists in Kenya.
Sometimes be exaggerated, and that's unfortunate. And part of my answer, I guess, to that problem is to come here and visit and to show this extraordinary country and the extraordinary progress that's been made. We have systematically reduced the territory that al-Shabaab controls. We have been able to decrease their effective control within Somalia and have weakened those networks operating here in East Africa.
There was general consensus between the two presidents that key among the raft of measures to stabilize Somalia from insurgency is strengthening the Somali government. Samugina, KTN News.
Let's go to other news that made headlines today. A heated war of words ensued between Kakamega Governor Wycliffe Oparanya and Senator Boni Khalwale in Matungu's sub-county. Court leader Raila Odinga witnessed the chaos unfold, as Dorcas Wangira now tells us.
Chaos. Heated exchange in Matungu, Kakamega. This is an ODM stronghold, but a burial turns chaotic, this being the inciting incident.
Akipelekwa kotini, akifungiwa kwa choo. Nataka niulize governor, nataka niulize MPs, nataka niulize MCS, walikuwa wapi?
Mayakalo MCA Cleophas Malala openly criticized the county governor Wycliffe Oparanya of shielding a CEC implicated in misappropriation of 200 million, and then this. You will be asked what you have done, the Kakamega senator sings, bluntly directed to the governor before he reiterates an ambition he had declared before.
Mimi sina tamaa ya fisi. I am satisfied to be the senator of Kakamega. However, in 2017, ninataka nitoe Oparanya ndio Waluya wajue. Mheshimiwa Raila, Governor wetu Oparanya is your deputy party leader. Do not worry about Kakamega. I will not come to disrupt the order in court. But if Oparanya wants to meet me for primaries nomination, chini. Akitaka mwisho, chini. Murio mnogo! Murio! Kama mmelipwa mwende. You go home. Mnaona ile imefanyika. Watu waliletwa hapa kuharibu matanga yetu. Nataka saa hii Bwana Khalwale nikuambie mimi niko tayari kufesi wewe. Wakati wowote usilete porocho huku Butere Mumias. Niko tayari Bwana Khalwale kupambana na wewe.
Former Premier Raila Odinga had to play arbiter here.
Watu wasiseme siasa hapa. Lakini nilikuwa najua hiyo ni maneno ya utani. Nijua kina Khalwale wakishafika hapa siwezi kuwazuia kupiga siasa. Lakini siasa nzuri ile siasa ya kujenga, sio ile siasa ya kubomoa. Sasa moja anasema na mwingine anasema. Tuwe wale watu ambao wamekomaa kisiasa. Kama wewe unasema, mimi naweza kwa mimi sikubaliana na yale unasema. Lakini napata wewe sema, baada mimi nitakujibu.
If this event is anything to go by, as analysts in the county say, the writing is on the wall for ODM, not a good sign if the house is divided against itself. Dorcas Wangira, KTN News, Kakamega.
And I thought we were supposed to be on our best behavior while President Barack Obama is in town. Alright, that's a look at what's happening politically in other parts of the country. We want to take a short break right now on KTN Weekend Prime. You're watching KTN News wherever you are across East Africa. We're taking a short break. Back in a moment. Good evening and welcome back. Thanks for joining us on KTN Weekend Prime. We continue with our focus on the Global Entrepreneurship Summit that was an ideal platform for high net worth business leaders to mingle and get business propositions they can invest in. Our senior business reporter Abby Agina was at the heart of the action in Gigiri. He spoke to a number of the business leaders to find out some of the areas they will be putting their money in.
Well, it has been an eventful day here at the United Nations headquarters here in Gigiri, where President Barack Obama officially opened the 6th Global Entrepreneurship Summit. A host of business leaders are attending this year's summit, and we got the opportunity to speak to a number of them. Among the business leaders we got a chance to interact with is the founder of America Online, Mr. Steve Case, who had interesting perspectives around how Africa can borrow from America, especially on the IT front. He also speaks quite a lot about internet penetration in Africa, saying the levels haven't reached what Africa can attain. Well, let's listen in on that interview.
The internet really has been a game changer. It has leveled the playing field. Smartphones and other kinds of phones in different parts of the world have given people access they never otherwise would have had. And we're still in the early days of figuring out all the new possibilities of that new platform, the marriage of the internet technology, the network, and phones. And I think in the next decade you're going to see all kinds of innovation all around the world. And there's no reason it can't be in places like Nairobi. And there's no reason that entrepreneurs in Nairobi can't just serve the Kenyan market or the African market. They also can serve the global market, and we're already seeing entrepreneurs breaking through and doing that, and I think you'll see a lot more in the years to come. We're seeing entrepreneurship globalize. It's a great startups being built all over the world, and certainly many in Africa and certainly many in Kenya. And the fact that Nairobi is really hosting this global entrepreneurship summit, thousands of people from all over the world are here, including President Obama, I think really sends a signal that Africa's open for business, that Kenya's on the move, that the startup scene in Nairobi is quite robust. I think it's a very encouraging sign for this whole region. About 5 years ago, you started seeing an acceleration of investment from private equity funds focused on infrastructure and more mature businesses. I think the next 5 years, you're going to see much more interest in the early stage entrepreneurial businesses, the startups, and that's really going to be our focus. We've invested in several companies already in this area. One is Brick, which is doing energy in remote villages. Another is Sanergy, doing sanitation. But we also have invested in several funds, angel funds, including the Africa Angels Network and Village Capital, that's focused on investing in Africa. So we really do believe the opportunity is significant, and I think more and more investors from around the world are going to recognize they're sure they're great entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley, but they're also great entrepreneurs in Nairobi, and you'll see more capital coming to Nairobi in the years to come.
My name is Nick Nesbitt, and I am General Manager of IBM Eastern Africa. From an education standpoint, today IBM is announcing a $60 million investment in skills upgrading in Africa. Primarily, that investment is going to be made in 80 universities across Africa, of which about 50 plus or minus will be in Kenya alone. Going along with that investment, we are partnering with KENET, Kenya Education Network, which is think of it as a telecommunications network that connects 50 universities. We will deliver IBM technology, IBM courses for free to students and lecturers on those campuses. We will train the lecturers on the technology. We have over 1,000 people already in the universities in which we've begun training, and close to 100 lecturers that we've already trained. This is just the beginning.
Leslie, and I'm chairman of the United States African Development Foundation. There are so many things happening in Kenya that are really laying a foundation for economic growth. And 50% of the jobs in this country, and in most countries, but in 50% of both the jobs and 50% of GDP are created by small and medium-sized enterprises. So the extent to which Kenya is creating a climate that really allows those kinds of smaller companies to grow is how it's going to drive its growth, and it's going to create jobs and opportunities for Kenya. We now have about 325 projects in 18 sub-Saharan African countries. The total value of the portfolio is about $54 million. In Kenya, we've been very involved for the last 5 years, and were involved before oil and gas was discovered there, but up in Turkana. One of the missions of USADF is to work in very marginalized areas, and Turkana, in large part because of its location, its remote location, really had not received much assistance. And so we made a multi-year commitment to go up there, and we're doing 3 different kinds of projects: irrigation for farming, livestock management, primarily goats, and fisheries in Lake Turkana. And they've been very successful. We're into the 3rd year of that program, and we're very pleased with it. The other thing we're doing in Kenya, working with GE, is to fund, we created something called an off-grid energy challenge, where we're going to fund 50 entrepreneurs over a 5-year period. We'll give each of them $100,000 as startup money towards developing innovative ways to address off-grid energy issues or solutions. And a number of, I think we have at least 3 or 4 that I can think of right now, of these projects have come from Kenya. So we're involved heavily in Kenya.
We've done a lot of interviews by now, looking at some of the challenges that young innovators face and young entrepreneurs face is access to capital. But I believe you have a different way of looking at things. Just share with us some of the other alternatives that entrepreneurs can look at, rather than keep on complaining that banks do not have products for them. How can they tackle this?
Well, first of all, access to capital is a real issue, but it depends on how much capital you want. First of all, you should make affordable next steps. You know, I started off with 1 hat, and then I sold 2, and then I sold 10, then I sold 20. You don't need to start off with 1,000, number one. Number two is, because of technology, there are ways that you can go out and put a product out there. People will prepay for the product if you can deliver the product within 30 days, and they pay full margin for it, not wholesale, and you take that money and make sure you can deliver to your customer. Then we also have crowdsourcing platforms that are out there. Also, OPM, everybody always talks about other people's money, but you can make money off of other people's manufacturing, other people's mind power, other people's marketing, and always off of other people's mistakes. Sometimes create strategic relationships with people that are not in your business but close to your business, and find ways to make money then. Don't always just look at, if I only had $1. You don't necessarily need that.
Speaking about if I only had $1, looking at some of the other issues that crop up for young innovators and young entrepreneurs is that majority of them try to go for the big projects. At the same time, they haven't assessed really whether they can handle it or not. Maybe I want to get your closing thoughts around this.
Don't go for the big one. The key to being an entrepreneur is 2 things. First of all, do what you're absolutely obsessed at and that you love, and also take affordable steps, because if you're doing what you love, then unfortunately, if you don't make a lot of money, you'll have an amazing time doing it. And if you take affordable steps, you won't have to pay for it for the rest of your life.
Indeed, it has been a great kickoff to this year's Global Entrepreneurship Summit. A lot of optimism among the entrepreneurs as well as the investors. Majority of them saying they are committed when it comes to ensuring that they end up striking alliances with some of the entrepreneurs who are showcasing some of their businesses to them. We'll be keeping an eye for you and just giving you a breakdown of what this means for the economy and for you back at home. My name is Abe Agina. For today, this brings us to the close of our coverage. Back to you in studio.
All right, I know he said it brings us to the close of our coverage, but we want to continue at that summit for just a moment. And there was a great exchange of ideas and an opportunity for local entrepreneurs to pitch their ideas to global businessmen. John Alanamu was also there and spoke to a couple of them, including Damon John.
Busy day here at the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in the United Nations headquarters here in Nairobi, mostly about the kind of discussions that can go on between the North and the South, between entrepreneurs here, the innovators here, and the entrepreneurs in businesses and governments of the West with regard to being able to bridge that gap and pull up Africa and Kenya out of poverty. Lots being discussed specifically with respect to skills transfer, technology transfer, and whether there are any ideas in this part of the world that can be carried over to become viable businesses. One of the people who've been interested in the discussions here today is Damon John, who is a global advisor to President Barack Obama on entrepreneurship but you'll know him better as one of the hosts of the show, The Shark Tank. I spoke to him earlier on today and asked him about whether there were any ideas from African entrepreneurs, from Kenyan entrepreneurs, that he was excited about.
Well, first of all, I haven't been pitched many just yet. Have I heard ideas? I sat there today and watched 3 amazing people get on stage after the president. Or actually, 2 or 3 that were on stage with him were amazing ideas, which inspired me as an entrepreneur to say, you know, sometimes you see individuals that go through so many things or sacrifice so much that I sit there and go, I'm lazy. So I've seen amazing things. But also to be somebody who has the ability to maybe invest and stuff like that, that doesn't mean that somebody wants me to invest. So you think I can just walk up to everybody, great company, I think I want a piece of that. Get out of here, get out of here. I didn't start this company to have you have a piece of it. So it all depends on, you know, if I see things that they feel that I can be of value, and I think that I can be of value. But as of right now, nobody's actually pitched me a business, but I'm going down to hit the floor and check out everybody, and if I see something, I absolutely will love to be part of it. Oh, I'm sorry, I did see one that I really liked, and maybe I can help them in the United States. It was part of Power Africa. It was the company that was making solar lamps for about $5, and I think that maybe I can help them with distribution in the United States, but they're doing amazing here already.
One thing that a lot of us notice is that you are very quick to be able to spot a good idea and dismiss a bad one. From the point of view of an entrepreneur, what is it that you look for immediately you hear about an idea?
Thank you. Well, you know, I spot good and bad according to what my criteria is. It doesn't mean that when I say something's bad, it's not going to work, because the beauty of Shark Tank is there's companies that we all say we're not interested in, they go off and they prove us wrong. So that's the great part of being an entrepreneur. Nobody else is in charge of your destiny but you. I look at the things that I find attractive because of my history. And the best part about my history is that I have failed so many times that I know what doesn't work for me, I don't like, or maybe I'm not good at. So I think that when I look at potential partners and businesses, I look at a couple of things. Can the person share with me and explain to me what this business is or concept is within a very short amount of time? If you have to spend too much time thinking about it, and I have to spend too much time thinking about it, it probably isn't good for me.
President Barack Obama spoke about entrepreneurship, calling it the spark of development here in Africa and here in Kenya. But some critics have talked about the United States forging of a relationship based on entrepreneurship with Kenya and with Africa as part of a global geopolitical struggle and scramble for Africa being fought between the United States, the West, China and the BRICS. I spoke to the United States Administrator for Small Businesses, one of the high-level delegates that have been brought here for the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. Her name is Maria Contreras-Sweet, and here's what she had to say about that relationship.
Well, I think that the African people will have to decide for themselves who their partners ought to be and when and where. I think that's for the African people to decide. For example, we have had the pleasure of hosting the African presidents in the White House. We invited them in, and it was a wonderful African summit. And it was the first that we had had. And many of them that I talked to, the different heads of state, said that they had been meeting with the Chinese, they had been meeting with the Brazilians, they had been meeting with other countries. And they had been eager to understand how they could connect with the United States as well. And when I asked them why, they said, we really do appreciate the kind of governance model that America represents. We are not perfect. America has a lot of problems. I'd be the first to admit it. But one of the things that I can tell you from my personal story is that I was able to come into the country personally as an immigrant. I didn't speak a word of English. I certainly didn't speak the language of business. But because of the democracy that I encountered, I was able to navigate through and to start 3 different businesses that changed the arc of my life and the way I can provide for my family. That social mobility, I think, happens.
So what do you know about the Global Entrepreneurship Summit and the impact it may have on the region? Ashamwelu answers some of your questions.
A melting point of cultures, all united by the quest for innovation and self-reliance. Dubbed the Global Hub of Networking, the Global Entrepreneurship Summit brings together entrepreneurs and investors from across Africa and the world to share and exchange ideas. But the unspoken facts of this summit is why the 2015 GES will have a different outlook from the 5 previous ones.
America respects the right of all peaceful and law-abiding voices.
It's an idea born on the stage of Cairo University's reception hall. On 4th of June 2009, exactly 7 months after his historic election, President Barack Obama sought a new beginning for U.S. relationship with the Middle East. As such, he titled his infamous Cairo speech just that, a new beginning.
The first issue that we have to confront is violent extremism in all of its forms. In Ankara, I made clear that America is not and never will be at war with Islam. We will, however, relentlessly confront violent extremists who pose a grave threat to our security.
Out of that vision to change the narrative of extremism and oppression in the Muslim world, Obama promised a new wave of support for young men and women in the Middle East and Northern Africa. Support for young and women entrepreneurs.
I would like to deliver a message of peace from my country. Please come to Egypt and invest in Egypt. Connect to the people of Egypt.
And out of his speech, the first 5 summits, though global, became centralized around that renewed relationship. In 2010, Washington opened its doors to the global entrepreneurs and investors. The next year, the summit sailed towards Istanbul, Turkey. In 2012, Dubai hosted the Global Entrepreneurship Summit before it headed to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Last year, President Obama's brainchild entered Africa, into Marrakech, Morocco, though still the trend of Muslim nations remained.
Thank you for your commitment to the call I issued 4 years ago in Cairo. The need for new partnerships between the United States and Muslim communities around the world.
This year, for the first time, the Global Entrepreneurship Summit extends outside the U.S. and the Muslim world into Nairobi, Kenya. But the coincidence of it all cannot be ignored. The world has grown aware of how Kenya has suffered her own dose of violent extremism over the last few years, leading the U.S. to elevate even further its security agenda in the region. And when President Obama spoke of his upcoming trip to Kenya, he hinted at the issue of terrorism and security being at top of the agenda.
And my hope is that we can deliver a message that the U.S. is a strong partner, not just for Kenya, but for sub-Saharan Africa generally, build on the progress that's been made around issues of health and education, focus on counterterrorism issues that are important in East Africa because of Al-Shabaab and some of the tragedies that have happened inside of Kenya.
So while Kenya becomes the first country outside the Muslim world to have hosted this summit, pundits are keen on how the initial agenda of re-engineering America's turbulent relationship with the Middle East will be handled. Ashamwelu, KTN News.
A very good evening and welcome to today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Kenya will play Mauritius in the first round of the 2018 FIFA World Cup finals qualifiers. The draw was conducted this evening in St. Petersburg, and that is in Russia. It is also witnessed by the Russian President Vladimir Putin and also the embattled FIFA President Sepp Blatter.
53 African countries were in the draw, with only Zimbabwe missing following their expulsion by the world body for failing to pay a former coach. As has been the case in the past years, Africa has been allocated 5 slots in the finals. There will be 3 rounds of qualifying for the African sides. Round 1 features the lowest 26 ranked countries, which Kenya is part of, based on the July rankings. The winners of the 2 ties advance to round 2, to where they will join the remaining 27 highest ranked teams. In the final round, 5 groups of 4 teams will meet both home and away, and the winner of each group will qualify for Russia 2018. Former Cameroon striker Samuel Eto'o was on stage in Russia to help with the African draw and pulled out his own nation. The indomitable Lions will feature in round 2 and will take on the winners of the first tie from round 1 between Somalia and Niger. In the peak of the other ties, 2010 World Cup host South Africa face a tough second round meeting against Angola. The African champions Ivory Coast will play either Liberia or Guinea-Bissau, and the 2015 runners-up Ghana will face either Comoros or Lesotho. Nigeria, under new coach Sunday Olise, will play either Djibouti or Swaziland, and Algeria, Africa's highest-ranked nation, will play the winners of Tanzania versus Malawi. Joshua Kimboi, KTN News.
Kenyan athletes are tonight mourning the sudden death of their representative, and that is Zen Edward Branson. Branson from the Czech Republic collapsed and died during the morning run in return early today. Before his demise, whose cause is yet to be known, Branson represented a number of Kenyan athletes, among them former world marathon record holder Patrick Macau, 2-time world cross-country champion, senior women's winner Emily Chebet, and also Wilson Chebet. According to athletes who were assembled in Eldoret this evening, autopsy results could not be released since the next of kin abroad had not yet been informed. To matters of volleyball now. Kenya finished third in Pool A at the masculine volleyball Africa Cup of Nations in Cairo. The Kenyan men bounced back to win the final match in 3 sets against Botswana in Cairo, Egypt. After losing to host Egypt later to Algeria, Kenya fought to lock out Botswana 25-19 in the first and also the second set, and 25-23 to finish third in Pool A, but that is outside the medal fighting bracket. The men's result is nothing compared with the Malkia strikers, who have won the African title 9 times. Algeria and Egypt progressed to the semi-finals after winning their 2 opening matches, and that is against Kenya and Botswana.
All right, we've come to the end of our bulletin this evening right here on KTN Weekend Prime. Want to thank you for watching, and to remind you, on KTN News right after this bulletin is All Woman with Najma Ismail, and you can definitely catch that on DSTV channel 274 and channel 94 on GoTV and channel 14 on Zuku Television. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole. After All Women, I'll definitely be back at midnight with another update on the day's top stories. But I want to leave you now with President Barack Obama's best moments here in the country, expressing his gratitude over his reception at his father's homeland, from the 21 gun salutes to his Guard of Honor inspection. A section of Kenyans disappointed by his itinerary, but I want to leave you with some of Obama's moments in Kenya today. Have a good night. I'll see you again in about 2 hours.